What is up, y'all? It's your boy Aniki, and once again, I come back to you with a My Hero Academia chapter review. As you already know, we like to do the page-by-page breakdown for the most part, or sort of. But here we go, because this chapter starts off pretty straightforward. You know, you got the Endeavor and Hawks and Genus once again on another case, trying to help combat the amount of released convicts. You see that one of the villains that he takes out straight up blames Endeavor, like, hey man, like you're out here like fighting me, but it's your fault, which is a weird thing to say, because like, okay, like even if it is my fault that you're out of jail, why would I just let you keep doing bad things? But okay, the thing that a couple things that I did like about this though is that the ignited arrow is actually a return of a season 2 anime original scene maneuver that he used on Anomu, and I really enjoyed the fact that instead of him just having a random dodge, he actually spins through the air. This is mostly to minimize the amount of areas that the nails from the gun could actually even hit, and the fact that Detonarat technology is still out there being used as support course weapon or support weapons for the average villain. Part of that would be just going to old Detonarat warehouses, but there was also several months where they got to sell heroes, support gear, and in addition to that, they would have, in the process of getting funding for that by selling 2 heroes, would have gotten extra funding to support their underground racket. So the underground aspects of Detonarat, even if they are no longer a functioning company or they are in the process of being dissolved as a company and sued for damages, etc., there's still time for them to make sales, do these trades, etc. There may be a freeze on their assets, so that's why the underground aspects of it are still probably what's going down. Now, Genist is, talking to Endeavor after the conflict, and they talk about how they haven't been able to find any villains associated with All for One yet. And immediately we see that there's a bunch of a mob forming, and they're coming, and somebody in the English translation it says, "Get out of here, you scum." But apparently in the Japanese, they were called a word that translates to gods of the plague. This is actually a really important distinction here, and I understand why, within the context of our culture, it wouldn't have made sense to say gods of the plague, because it doesn't really seem to fit with any of the things within the story. But for those of you who have watched my History Academia videos, you are aware of My Hero Academia's villains and its social structuring being a direct reference to the 80s and 90s Japan, where they had a big economic bubble, and then there was a huge crash, and then this cult managed to gain a lot of power and eventually led to a lot of lashing out and causing lots of different issues. But even before that, what really allowed for these cults to form and gain this power and traction and move with impunity, even with having suspicious interactions with people in the past, was the fact that when the U.S. bombed Japan and we basically put an end to World War II, we restructured their constitution. When we restructured their constitution, they no longer had the ability to just exclusively maintain Shintoism. So the whole focus of the Shinto religion was no longer allowed to just be about that. And this opened the gateway to religious freedom and different religions coming into the country, and finally people getting to experience them. Because up until, it's important to remember that up until 1945, the emperor of Japan was seen to be anointed by God. In fact, when they lost World War II, the emperor and his regime did not actually have to step down from leadership. What happened is that the emperor effectively, he abdicated his godhood. He effectively was like, all right guys, I'm not a god, we lost, it is what it is, that's it is. And so a lot of religions started coming into the area, and so if you look at that, it's the same as All Might, who shows up in the Stars and Stripes, beats down All for One, establishes this era of peace, eventually creating an era of bustling commerce within Japan. It all fits and tracks. And that particular time period was known as the rush hour of the gods, when all kinds of gods got to rush into Japan and people got to explore and learn about all kinds of religions around the world finally, instead of being that isolated country that they had been for so long. So there's your quick My Hero history lesson. If you want to learn more about that stuff, obviously you can go look at the My History Academia video. So yeah. Now, what they argue about, what the mob is so upset over, is first off, they want to address the fact that Shigaraki just, got away. And he's like, we wouldn't have to deal with these escape. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. They let him get away. They don't want to look at it as a fight between two people. They look at it as, even if they're stronger, you are obligated to win. It kind of goes back to what Shigaraki said during the Kamino War arc, where when he was trying to recruit Bakugo, he straight up asked, why are they being so harsh on the heroes? They tried their best. Nobody even died in that incident, but yet they were getting met with so much flack. And here you find Endeavor and all these other heroes being hated. And sure, they did not handle this like the best. They ended up making a mistake and some miscalculations. But what they were trying to do was keep these people safe. And what these people are taking for granted, especially because it is now April, is that if the heroes had not struck in March, they would be in a worse position today, more than likely. Or today would just be the day. All that happens is a 1 month. It's kind of like that question of, like, Omni-Man goes, oh, what, today or 50 years from now, what does it matter? But in this case, it's literally the end of March or the end of April, you get destroyed. But if you waited until the end of April, you would have had a full-powered Shigaraki that would have been able to go on this tear. Furthermore, they're upset because the media has leaked, obviously, that Deku is a target, though they don't know specifically who Deku is, nor do they know that he is the wielder of One for All, or what that quirk even is about, or what it means. So people are still upset about that too. Then you see that people have signs on there, with Endeavor on it, just saying, like, my family faced the flames, a reference to Dabi being, a person who has taken many, many lives. They are like, the grieving relatives of the victims Dabi burned to ashes went on TV. Did you even see that? And it's important to note that we had 30 confirmed cases of dead bodies, or Dabi confirmed, that he killed over 30 people in cold blood. And it's easy to just look at that as, okay, yeah, all the typical criminals that he ran into while he was trying to evangelize and recruit people for the League of Villains. But you also got to think that while he was riding on the back of Gigantomachia, Dabi was just launching torrents of fire randomly. They even said, they could tell the League was on the back because they kept seeing the blue flash and the flames coming off. So that's how they were like, that means the League is up there. So Dabi realistically racked up dozens to hundreds more bodies on his 80-kilometer run on the back of Gigantomachia. Just firing off like a turret, creating more wanton destruction, making sure that it caused more problems, making sure that society would be even more disenfranchised, making sure that when people look back and realize that the blue fire that burned their buildings, etc., was the son of Endeavor, they had even more reasons to be upset and to take what happened to Dabi personally. Information warfare, propaganda at its finest. No. Hawks is talking to them about, keeping up the surge for the Liberation Front, and we find out that they are coordinating with Edgeshot. So at this point, all the top heroes are coordinating with each other. I wouldn't even be surprised if we eventually see somebody talking to Mirko, if we see somebody talking to not Crust because he's dead, but Kamui Woods. Expect some of these characters to pop back up and get more interactions with some of the other kids. I wouldn't even be surprised if the way we get some of the kids coming back into the story is something like Edgeshot interacting with Kaminari, and we get to see a case like that, or just incorporation of what the kids are already doing, because they do have a shot. But of course, some of those side characters like Kaminari might have finally just fallen to the wayside, and they might not be relevant for a good while or ever again, but who knows. I think it's more for a little while. I think the old guard still has to pay the piper. Endeavor establishes that they have to make sure that they keep distance between Deku, and they decided to space it out more, and they don't want the media targeting Deku or blaming him or being angry at Deku for existing and working with the good guys when he's trying to put as many people in jail as possible. They were all worried about Jailbreaker, who was muscular, and Deku put him on a shirt and sent him packing. But right now, people just aren't in the mood to be grateful when things are terrible. It's hard to be happy when you don't have a house. It's hard to be happy when you don't know if you're going to live to see tomorrow because of some weirdo airing your place out. It's hard to be happy in this world right now. And one of the things that I think is extremely important, people are talking about, well, I think we got confirmation that Shigaraki is going to get his body hijacked and All For One is going to take it over. And I see this as the exact opposite, because consistently the heroes have decided they know exactly how things are going down. They decided, oh yeah, this is going to be the plan. This is what the villains are after. This is what they're going to do. This is we can handle this. Remember when they were like, oh yeah, Giganto Machia won't move, etc. So when he says we're assuming the escapees, the supervillains in particular, received orders of some kind. But think about it. Genist is assuming that the supervillains, the big threats, all got direct orders. And yet Muscular had no clue where Shigaraki or All For One was, and the only order he actually was given was that he should go wild and do as he pleases. So in turn, we know now that they don't understand the connection between All For One, Shigaraki, and all the supervillains he released. He's not creating a bond with all of them. Not all of them are these super special secret ops teams or whatever you want to call them, or Vanguard Action Squad Part 2 type characters. Many of them are just pieces that he released into the world so that you would not have time to hunt for him. You objectively need to go stop Jailbreaker. You objectively have to go stop Mr. Guy with the nail gun. You objectively have to stop the Cider House Gang, because if you don't do those things right now, people die right now. Shigaraki is technically not attacking, and if you don't protect people, then you get more pushback, more volatility, more hostility from these communities, from society, and heroes lose even more. But in this case, the villains don't need to do all that. All For One is in the wind hiding, recovering, doing whatever it takes, and in the process, he'll be able to come back stronger and still able to execute on these plans or whatever. And that's the important thing to me, is that these heroes are assuming, and they acknowledge that these are assumptions, so we shouldn't take their assumptions as facts when they themselves do not take their opinion as fact. But what I will say is that I do like the conversation they have where they discuss about how All Might punched All For One bald and blind. So you would think that he's, going to give up. And they're like, okay, but he's breeding Shigaraki to be the ultimate life form. And we get confirmation that Ujiko or Dr. Garaki, however you want to call him, is still in custody. And they're talking about the specifics of an initial body transfer. Now, the thing about this is that if this is truly how they're going to interpret it, that means they view the implantation of All For One's quirk, the quirk All For One into Shigaraki, as the body transfer. The issue with that is that, well, we've seen that All For One doesn't actually communicate with the other one. They're like work together in tandem because they have the same strategies. Keep in mind, he said, almost as if they were in sync. Now, keep in mind, nobody knows exactly the rules of All For One, and I think it's interesting to note that All For One, while in his own body, consistently spoke of picking things for Shigaraki based on his personality. He didn't want to take Best Genius quirk because it wouldn't fit Tomura. So if he didn't want to take Genius quirk because it wouldn't fit Tomura, then that means he had the expectation that Shigaraki would be the one wielding his quirks. This is kind of why I think Vestige for One is a little going rogue, especially when you think back to the speech in Vigilantes, where All For One talks about how, if a person enacts their will on a quirk in a negative way, they can become a villain. But if a quirk rampages and enacts its will on a person, that too can cause them to become a villain. And in turn, if you look at it from this angle, All For One himself has directly admitted that sometimes he sees a quirk and he just has to take it. This is an impulsive thing. This is the equivalent of being a kleptomancy. He has to steal. So in turn, Shigaraki, once that All For One quirk got placed in Shigaraki's body, it was like, well, take this body too. It's all for me. So in turn, what All For One, what his actual quirk personality and what he himself are actually seem to be disconnected to a certain degree. Obviously, you could argue that he was lying to everyone, including himself, at various points for no reason, like when talking to Ujiko, and he's like, oh yeah, Shigaraki was born twisted. This is great. This is going to be awesome. He's going to be a great symbol of terror. But it seems far more likely that All For One was aware he was dying, understood that he's not immortal, and decided to accept that. Because he got Shigaraki before he was punched bald. That is important to remember. He was already raising Shigaraki to be a villain before he was defeated and put in critical condition and really had to feel the effects of his age. The reality is that assuming Ujiko is mathematically in his 120s. More than likely, the Life Force quirk doubling All For One's time, even sure he's over 100 years old, but he still ages. He will still die. So, sure, it could be that he's counting, well, it might not actually be me, but it still has my memory, so that counts as me. This is a new me, but he would know that the real him is still dead. So I don't know if that's something that a person like All For One would do. Maybe we can completely download minds in here, but we've seen nothing to indicate that in the story, so I'm not gonna at all latch on to that notion. Like I said, I've always thought that All For One secretly wants the One For All quirk so that him and his brother can exist together in the Vestige world forever. I think he's just a creepy weirdo who's got this really twisted version of brotherly love. And then, they're talking about why Shigaraki might be needed, why his hatred is important. And Genis is like, hey, maybe it's not enough hatred. And Hawks is like, maybe he doesn't have any at all. Because he's like, the guy's always happy, smiling. And Endeavor's like, maybe there's just something missing in his soul. But either way, like, these villains don't have useful information. And the enemy seems to be avoiding conflict, and it's worth expanding our search, so we need to do what we can to actually help them, even though we may have to take extra heroes off the street. This is them accepting that they kind of already lost the PR battle, and they will continue to lose the PR battle, and as such, they may need to go out of their way to accept further losses in reputation, and then instead just focus on the actual win. We'll see how that goes. We could easily end up with a bunch of heroes that work essentially like Aizawa has always worked, and I think that's the direction that hero culture almost needs to go. But anyway, we see All Might driving around, whipping, and he's like, oh man, Deku, you're still on the move. You're not getting a lot of sleep. And he has a flashback to Night Eye being worried about him, talking to him, trying to get him to relax. Take a nice sleep, don't overwork yourself. This is something that we saw Vigilantes too when they were talking. Like, just All Might, you gotta take a break once in a while. You can't keep doing this to yourself. There's a beep that goes off in the All Might panel that also went off when Genis was there, and then what it turns out is Deku's GPS signal vanishes. And then while All Might goes, oh, damn it. And suddenly a bomb shows up right next to the driver's side of All Might's window and just blows up his vehicle. There's a couple different ways that this could be going, which I'll cover once we talk about the final couple pages. So, Deku is standing there, and before Danger Sense even reacts, boom, his phone is knocked out of his hand, and there's a weapon with a microphone attached to it, and it's like, hey, you, the boy in green, you're coming with me. And then Deku's just like, oh, someone's here for me. And he's like, it's not just any old villain here randomly. They're targeting me. And then he just goes, here we go, an escaped convict with ties to him. And then we find out that it's the girl who freed Overhaul from prison. And she's got a very interesting quirk. But also, we see that Overhaul is still in his prison uniform, sitting next to, on the roof of the building next to her, with his sleeves flapping in the wind looking down. So, when she says, come quietly, and you get to keep your limbs, it seems to imply that she might not actually be working for All For One. And this makes sense because at the end of the day, Deku did destroy Chisaki's life, and she did free him, and he was willing to look for the boss. And a lot of people felt like she wasn't about all the stuff that was going on. So if she turned out to be someone who was more invested in like the Overhaul side of things, or just in an individual rogue not tied to All For One, that would make a lot of sense to me. Now there's something I have to address with the last page, because people are telling me that she's got one leg. No. Just realistically, that's not what's happening here. The reason why I say this, though, is because Horikoshi loves to adhere to a lot of scientific principles whenever he can. Now, this is basically a Barrett 50 caliber rifle, possibly a higher caliber round, that she has protruding out of her arms. If her front leg is bent at the knee and sitting on top of the edge of the building, she would immediately fall over from firing that, because you would need support on your back leg to fire off a high caliber round without falling. That's part of why you got the bracer too, because you got to keep the recoil managed as much as possible. So I don't think she's missing the leg, guys. I'm pretty sure the angle is just such that, like this. See that? Boom. You can't properly see one of my hands, but they're both still there. So, or here, yeah. Boom. Look at that. Look at that. Oh. So yeah, it's just a visual thing. I don't think this is her missing a leg. And keep in mind, you guys told me that the smoke was probably Deku using an Air Force attack, and I told you that the automatopoeia for Smash meant it was physical, so this is probably going to be like that again. So just kind of remember that, like, that doesn't necessarily have to be a thing. It can just be that she has her legs set further back for support. It's really all it probably is. And then about the All Might thing, there's a couple of ways this could go down, because you could look at it as this is a coordinated strike on Deku by All for One to make sure that they get to capture him while taking out All Might. But you could also look at this as somebody is targeting All Might, and they happen to, as they were happening to take out Deku. The reason for this being that they could just simply be wanting to take out the Deku support system around him before trying to isolate and then capture him. Furthermore, we are at that 5 to 6 year stretch where All Might was predicted to die. We had that Night Eye flashback. I know some people are like, oh, All Might's busting out support gear. He's finally going to fight. Some people were like, I think All Might used buff form for a split second to tank the explosion and not die. Sure. Am I on that team? Not really, but I understand why people might feel that way and why they might want or think that All Might is going to get buffed, and fight back for a bit. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we did get a little bit of All Might fighting, but I just don't think this is a situation that comes out with All Might on top. If anything, I think that this might be the moment that we've been waiting for, and it might even play into the end of the USJ arc, where All Might talks about how All Might Tsukauchi tell Deku that whenever he's arrived on this scene, if somebody has called out for him, he has always succeeded in saving them. And so I think that this might be the moment where Deku has to really see and move in to try to save All Might and fail, and see him taken out right as he gets there, maybe not even getting to see them from range, and then gets taken out by the assassin lady anyway, and then that's how she gets captured, and then we start to see what Overhaul and her after, possibly trying to get his armor specs from Eri, because he's assuming that Deku would have some connection to where she wound up. And then from there, we take the next couple of steps in the plot, whether he's going to try to get the Eri to rewind him so he can fix the boss finally, or he's going to try to negotiate with Eri so she rewinds the boss. I don't know. But the reality is that I don't think that these things are connected in the way that they seem to be presented yet. But of course they could be. They could just be a straight up All for One strike team. Boom, done. But I think the fact that they only hit All Might and Deku, but there seems to not have been an attack launched on Endeavor, Genus, and Hawks, means that they haven't figured out what the entire Deku squad is. And so they're targeting specific people, not necessarily a group as a concept. So yeah, that's my take on this chapter from this week. If you guys like what I have to say or have anything you want to add to the discussion, go ahead and comment down below. You can always catch us live on Sundays when there's My Hero chapters for the Church of MHA. Sometimes we switch it out for Sunday OVAs when, My Hero's on break or Jump takes a break. But, just go ahead, tell me what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you want to subscribe, do subscribe. If you want to drop that like, drop that like. If you want to become a member because you've decided my channel is worth $1 a week, or 97 cents a week, really, then cool. Thanks for the support. I appreciate that. I'm working on the Spoils of War series. I've got some videos coming, one for Invincible that I want to do, and one for Undead Unluck that I want to get out here within the next week. I actually have a content week coming up soon, so I should be able to get you guys a couple more videos, especially next week. You should be able to see at least 2 extra drops, hopefully. And in addition to that, the Sensei Inc. stream discussing the best manga produced from Shonen Jump is supposed to be on the 21st of Friday, so be on the lookout for that, because I will be representing My Hero Academia for that. That's all I got to say. Anaki out.